Yep, as she said, my name is Landon Zapsik, and software architect working primarily on the Prism platform. Just kind of wanted to take this webinar to go through what's in our latest release of the Prism data acquisition software. And kind of at the end, I'll touch a little bit on what you'll expect in the next release, which is 1.7 as well. So, okay, so here's kind of a slide of our current releases. We're currently on Prism 1.6.0. Was actually released just a week ago or so. So it's hot off the press, available for download and install. Probably about 50 bug fixes, 30 feature enhancements, somewhere around there. Those are rough numbers depending on what you call a bug or a feature. But just give you a rough idea of some of the work we've done. It is a recommended upgrade for all customers, and it will be the installed version on any new customers and new systems that are going out. To give you a little background, the previous version before this one is Prism 1.5.4, which was released in May of this year. The actual 1.5.0 was released in January, and there have been a few hot fixes that have been applied to that, resulting in 1.5.4 in May. So if you have 1.5.0, definitely would recommend going to 1.6 or at least 1.5.4. To get rid of some of those bugs, especially if you have an ECMPS reporting system or a SpectraPack E system. There were a couple bugs in the 1.5.0 that do require an upgrade. As with all Prism releases, it's I guess recommended but optional. So if you don't want to upgrade to this version, you don't have to, but it is out there for you and available to be upgraded. It has some pretty cool features that we're kind of excited about it in there, and I'll kind of go over those in this slide. So after this release, the next scheduled release is Prism 1.7, and that will be, if all goes according to plan, January 2023. So just in a few months, and we're already starting quite a bit on development of that so far. We've only got 15 planned features in the backlog so far, so we do have room for some additional feature requests and enhancements. If you guys see anything or have anything you would like to see in that, please, as always, let us know. Quick technology update for the Prism platform of where we are. Currently, oldest supported are Windows Server 2012 and Plus, and Windows 10 Plus. Actually, Server 2012 with some of the new features in Prism 1.6 you won't get, at least for the client side of things. So if you have a 2012 Windows Server, we'd recommend upgrading. And then, of course, Windows 7 really isn't supported by the Prism client any longer either. So the oldest required version of the .NET framework that we run on is 4.7.2. It's been out there a while, shouldn't be a problem for anyone. Of course, anything newer, it'll run great on as well. Oldest version of SQL Server still supported is 2012. So anything newer than that pretty much will be fine. Recommended, so these are our going out the door kind of installations we set up Prism with. Windows Server 2019, Windows 11, and SQL Server 2019. All right, so I'll kind of get into some of the features. The first one is a new administration menu. So this is the client application. We have kind of revamped the entire admin menu. If you remember before, it was a tile-based. One tile is one page. As we start adding different features to administration, more capability and pages, more things that you can do with the system, more configurability, we needed a little bit more organization. So that's why we came up with this new administration menu. So the items on the left-hand side here, as we click through, are kind of the main sections, and then your actual actions that belong to those sections will show up there, organized a little bit in the main pane. So you can kind of drill down a little bit, more of a two-level navigation, which hopefully makes things easier. Also, another new feature we added in Prism 1.6 going forward is the ability for us to roll out what we call preview features. So these are features that we have kind of an idea on, and we think will probably be in a release of Prism at some point, but we kind of want to get feedback from anybody that's using those and do more of a kind of soft release to see if there's anything we need to add to those, kind of what your experience with those features is. So We've added this little toggle button down here in the bottom right of the client application. It's off by default, but you can click that and turn that on. And then if there are any areas of the application that have that preview feature capability, those will show up with the word preview, and you can use and kind of test those out. They should be relatively stable. Hopefully won't crash your application or anything like that. But again, not fully tested and developed and deployed. So continuing on with our administration screens, we've been working hard to add functionality there. In this release, we've added the Alarm Actions tab. So in the previous release, we redesigned this Alarms tab, and now we've added the Actions tab as well. That's been redesigned, fully verified. It allows you essentially to set up email outputs or actions or tag actions, and then apply or subscribe those actions to different alarms when those alarms have events. So that's kind of how that works. And it's, again, a new screen, new redesign. Here's kind of a detailed view of what that looks like. So the very first section, and again, this kind of follows our administration design through some of these admin screens. The very left section there is your filters list. So you can filter by email, output tag. Then kind of the middle pane there is designed to be kind of a listing of existing, in this case, alarm outputs or existing objects. The top there gives you the ability to search. Search as you type. You can also refresh. And then, as with most of these pages, there's a view to edit toggle switch. So you can go into all these pages and click around and view around without fear of actually clicking and editing anything. You do have to switch that to edit to be able to change things. And then the middle grid is your listing of existing alarm actions. And then down at the bottom, the little plus add button allows you to add a new action to that list. And then your right-hand pane there, number 4, is the actual details of that alarm action that you've selected in the middle. So this list can be filtered by email, output tag, or status. And it can be sorted alphabetically based off pretty much any of the columns by clicking the column header there. And you can also use the search as well. So if your output list kind of grows, you should be able to search and navigate through more easily than before. This is what the add new alarm action dialog looks like. So you give it a name, either an email address or an output tag. One of those is required. In this case, we filled out the email, which means this is the email address we want the alarm service to send an email alert to when this alarm comes on. And then the various alarms that will subscribe to this particular output are listed there, and you can check those to subscribe. Another administration screen we worked on is the trend administration screen. And this is what the new design looks like. It's pretty similar. You have your filters, your listing, and then your details kind of on the right-hand side. So with the filtering, we can filter based off of the type of trend or reporting group. And then you see all the different trend items that are available. You can filter off of those. So if you want to filter, show all the trends with your Unit 1 NOx ppm in them, you can do that. Just select that one item, and then in the list in the middle will show all the trends that are set up for that particular one. The middle section, excuse me, pretty similar. The only exception in the very top there, you'll see next to the refresh button is a small up and down button. So the trends themselves, when you build those do have an order that they're displayed on the screen in, and those up and down arrows there are only available when you're in edit mode. And when you're in edit mode, you can click on those to move the trend groups up and down and adjust your sort order. So how those will be displayed when you go to that trends page to actually view your trends. The details listing's pretty much the same, shows the details of the trends over there at the top right. And then below that, the bottom right shows the different trend items or the different tags that will go into your trend that are the different lines on the chart, different values you're looking at in the trend. So it shows those there as you select through the trends as well. Here's the filtering availability. Same thing here, sorting, which I touched on before. You can also use search as well here. Here's the actual details, a close-up of that. So name, description, time span, reporting group, all those details can be viewed, as well as the audit log. If you look at up there next to the back button, the little clipboard with this clock on it, if you hover over that, that's the audit log. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And then at the bottom right, again, a little close-up view of that. These are the different tags and their scaling that go into that particular trend. And if you're in edit mode, you see the little up-down arrows. You can select one of those and then move that different tag up and down to change the order of how that appears in your chart. And then the plus button here as well will allow you to add a new item to this particular trend right here. Once you're in edit mode, this is kind of a toolbar that'll pop up on the trend group details. So here we're looking at trend group 3. You can see save, rollback, and you can delete that trend group if you want, change the different options here. And there's also a copy from button. So that's a new feature we added in this release. If you click that, that makes a copy essentially of the trend that you have selected. Fills out everything exactly as the one you have selected. So all the trend items, all of your points, everything like that gets copied over to your new trend. So maybe that's a little easier to help you when you're setting up new trends. So here's the copy from existing. We clicked on it. All you have to do is give it a new name and whether or not you want it to be a public or private trend. So that was the trend administration screen. Also something we've done in 1.6 is audit log updates. Audit logs rolled out, I believe, in 1.5. It's essentially the ability for Prism to sort of automatically track any changes to any configuration object in the system with a date timestamp and a user who made those changes and what those actual changes were. So kind of important as you go through and the configuration settings get changed. We'll be rolling this feature out to more parts of the application later, so you'll be able to go in through these administration screens and see exactly when things were changed and by who, kind of as a historical log in case someone makes a mistake or you need to change it back, anything like that. Here's kind of some interaction with those. You can see on hover over, it shows you the last dozen or so of those in a grid form. If you need to see detail, you can click on it. It will open up a full pop-up of the full log with the date and time, username, and exactly what was changed from there. There's also filtering and sorting capabilities on this log as well as refresh. So you see that little icon throughout the application. That's what it means. It's the audit log for whatever object you're looking at. In this case, this is a local source database alarm we're looking at. Another feature we added in 1.6 is toast notifications or Windows, I guess, 10 and 11 style notifications. So you've probably seen this with a lot of apps. If you have some sort of notification that comes in, it'll come in, kind of down the bottom bar, like an Outlook thing or something like that. And then it will put an entry in your notification center as well. So you can have a kind of a history of what was notified and when. So that's all available in Windows 10 Plus. So we have added that to Prism as well. So any of those messages that we used to notify through the top title bar there, things like adding messages to the system or backup error messages, things like that, will now show in the Windows notification center. And it does change with your theme as well. So here we're going and we're generating a message, a test message, and you can see kind of what it looks like there. And then here's what it has the record of it in the notification center. So you can dismiss those if you want, or you'll have a record of them there as well. Another feature we've added for 1.6 is the ability to show continually how many alarms, if any, are silenced or muted at the moment. So with the alarms in Prism, you have the ability to what's called mute or silence an alarm. Which means, hey, I know this alarm is a problem. It's going off. It's going to keep going off, but I don't want it to, for example, trigger my SIMS fault, or make everyone think the system is in alarm. We're waiting on, maybe some equipment to be repaired or something like that. So in that case, you would want to mute that alarm. You don't want to delete it completely. You just want to temporarily turn it off. So this will show you if you have any of those alarms muted, because the idea here is that you'll eventually want to know that and want to go back and turn it back on when the problem is corrected. So now that displays down there in the bottom right of the alarm bar, and you can right click on it to view those alarms that have been silenced as well. Here's just a little screenshot of that. You can see we have 53 muted on that system, and you can click on it to view those alarms if you wanted to. Another brand new screen we've added to the administration section is called a site viewer. So pretty excited about this. This allows you kind of to visually see how a lot of your Prism objects are set up and configured in the system and how they relate to each other. So it's kind of like a tree view, and you can kind of drill down and see, okay, start at the plant level. Here's my different units. Here's the different tags and instruments that go into that unit. It kind of shows you all the different associations and allows you to click on those and then see details for each one of those objects kind of in the tree. This is rolling out as a preview feature, so we'd like to get any feedback you may have for this new feature in 1.6. So it's under Sim Site. You'll see the preview label on Site Feature. Pulls up. You just kind of drill down. Here's your reporting group. You can see all of our hourly data. Our probe has instruments under it and tags under that instrument. You can click on an object and see the various details for that. QA event configs for that instrument and what bottle is associated with that QA event config as well, and tag. So hopefully pretty helpful in visualizing your system and kind of figuring out the layout of things and how things are set up. One screen we've kind of redesigned for Prism 1.6 is the alarm screen. So it's the basic alarm screen that you go to. You'll see it looks a little different. The tiles are somewhat different. The behavior is a little different on those. There's a little icon to collapse those and open those up, but overall the experience is pretty much the same. If you click on a muted alarm, it'll just give you the option to unmute it or not unmute it. And so you can go through there, hover over, click on to expand, and then you'll see the alarm history for those as well. All the search and filter options work the same as they did before. So it's just the screen looks a little bit different, kind of going with the Windows 11 theme. We're just kind of keeping up to date with the styles of Windows. Same thing for the calibration screen. So if you click on that in 1.6, you'll notice that's a little different. The detail screen, I think this data grid has been updated a little bit. There is filtering and sorting capabilities here, but then the actual instruments themselves under the different probes, you can see we've done some visual updates to those. Those work similar kind of to how the alarm screen has been done. Basically just click to expand. And we have worked on the expand view of this screen. So here we're looking at our NOx low range instrument, and we really wanted to put as much configuration detail under here as possible. So we put everything from the alarms that are configured here to the past calibrations to your limits to anything at all that would be associated with your NOx low range calibrations. So you can really use this as a point of reference to go expand that and see all the detail you may need to see about, for instance, your NOx low range span cal and how it's configured. So that's a new update with a lot of new information added to that as well. So probably the biggest features in 1.6 are the 8864 point integration. So 1.5 was our first version that I believe we were able to talk to the 8864 at all. So it was kind of a basic integration with the 8864. In 1.6, we've expanded on that, expanded on some of the features that are available in the 8864 that Prism can now leverage and use that we weren't using before. So some of that is setting the scaling, the units of measure, and the names for different points in Prism through this new administration screen, and then that configuration information is downloaded to the 8864, just like your sequences or calibrations have been in the past. These screens are designed to kind of do that in Prism and then kind of flush and download everything to the 8864. This will allow operators or instrument technicians to interact with the 8864 a little better. If there's easier to read point scaling and naming and that kind of stuff in the 8864 that matches what's going on with Prism. So here we go to the 8864 point configuration under the admin menu, server and devices and source configuration. So we're looking at the different sources. We've selected the 8864. This is the button that you click on to edit this point configuration, and you'll see how that's how essentially you get to that screen. Once you're on this edit 8864 point configuration screen, the main top level navigation and function you would do, as you can see here, you select our device and then you edit, go to the screen. You can see we can refresh here and we'll choose what we want to look at based off the categories. We've broken them into analog inputs, analog outputs, digital inputs, and digital outputs. And you can see some additional logger information there about which logger we're interacting with. So for the analog inputs, here's the data flow kind of diagram that shows you how that works between 8864 and the Prism server. The inputs go from the physical device to the raw readings inside the 8864 to an A-type channel where Prism picks it up from the raw data collector service and then eventually turns that raw data into our tag data that we use for our 1-minute samples. Here you can see we have a blank with no points at all. So we're creating a point on address 1. It defaults with if there's any tag data associated with that. We hit OK, and then it immediately downloads that to the 8864. And then you can see here tag name 001 is now in the 8864 along with all of our scaling. So that's really how easy it is to create one of these. And again, they use the same principle for the sequences and other screens. When you save, it actually saves it to the Prism database and downloads it to the 8864 as well. Here's kind of a detailed view of how these analog inputs that you're editing in Prism will actually map to what you see in the 8864. The name and the units of measure are there. Scale low and signal low are there. Low input versus low output. And scale high and signal high as well. Here's kind of a detailed view of the options when creating that. Obviously name, counts, signals, ability to edit those. Next we have analog outputs. So this graph kind of shows you a little bit about how those are generated. So those come from the Prism server, from the raw data to the tag data. The tag will output that to a controller constant in the 8864, which actually outputs to a math channel, which outputs to our analog output, and then those finally will go out to the physical device. And here's how those correspond. So the name, unit of measure is the same. You can see that there. Here's where your signal low, signal high, scale low, signal low, excuse me. Scale high and signal high as well, those mappings for the analog outputs. And here's a view of the analog output particular properties that can be changed. For digital inputs, it comes from the device to the digital input. We actually store those in a Modbus channel. We'll pack 16 of those digital inputs in at once to a register, and Prism will actually read from that Modbus channel via the 8864 protocol to the Prism server, to our raw data, and then to the tag data. You can create individual names for each individual raw digital input, and then basically the channel number as well. Digital output, pretty similar, comes from the Prism server to the digital output, and again, we map that to a Modbus channel, and we actually read back that Modbus channel data from the 8864 itself in order to get values or raw data values from that digital output. And the name is pretty much the only thing you can change there. But it is nice to set up both the inputs and the outputs. It doesn't take much time at all. You basically click the button, and then you go to your 8864, and you're able to see, what these actual inputs and outputs are right there on your screen. So that's how you do the point configuration and kind of set that up to work a little better with the 8864. We've also added another 8864 screen. This is the Modbus configuration screen. This basically gives us the ability to add, edit, or update the 8864's Modbus configuration file from inside Prism. So each Prism system that ships with an 8864 does have a Modbus file in it that's running. It does handle our digital inputs and digital outputs. And this editor will allow you to go in there and make changes to that. Specifically, if you need to add cards to it, or you want your 8864 to communicate via Modbus to other devices, it has that capability as well. And this is the screen where you would go to do that. So here you can see kind of a sample. We're viewing the Modbus configuration file here. There's nothing set up. So we click Edit. We bring up the Modbus configuration screen. Hit Add New. We'll give it a name. We're creating this a new Modbus server configuration file in Prism. Hit Create, and it puts in this blank Modbus text for you, so you can then modify it, however you want. But it's kind of a default text. And then if you hit Save, it should save and download it. And then if you go back to the 8864, you'll see there's our file there. It has been pushed to the 8864. So every part of every Prism configuration, like I said, is the Modbus in the 8864. So that'll be part of your system when you get a configured system. So that will already be an entry in here, so you won't have to create it from scratch, but you will be able to go in here and kind of make changes to it, edit to it, and add to it as well. It's handy also if you switch out your 8864 or do a cold start or a firmware upgrade, you would want to make sure to go into here and then re-download your existing Modbus server CFG into the 8864. A little more detail on what that looks like. The middle section here is kind of a historical, what your past Modbus files were. Those kind of just are there for reference. They get rolled off as you add new ones. You can't, for example, revert and go back to one of those, but you can click on those, view them, edit, copy, paste, and then paste into your new one. So if there's something you were doing in an older file, you do have the ability to look at that, copy it, and paste it into your current file. Kind of a UI type view of what this screen is. So we have our listing there on the left. You have the ability, the buttons at the bottom, to add a new server CFG, which is a blank one, or you can select an old server Modbus file and hit copy from existing, and that will take all that old data and then put it into the new file that you're putting there. Then on the right-hand side, it is your actual file and the file editor. There is some syntax highlighting going on there as well as the toolbar buttons for things like, copy, paste, undo, redo are there as well as save and discard. You can also lock a file. So if you're making some changes to a Modbus file and you get it how you want it, you hit lock. And then that essentially means that can't be changed anymore. If someone wants to make a change, they will have to create a new one, which they could do from copy from existing, and then have a new record in there as well. So that was that screen, the 8864 screens. Moving on, we do have another new administration screen. This one's called the Object Association Editor. Basically, Prism has in it the ability to make different, I guess you could say, loosely defined relationships between objects in Prism, mainly for the application or for different specialized type setups or configurations that you might have. So, for example, every span cal is going to have, a span cal bottle. But every span cal may not have a pressure, a cal gas pressure tag attached to it. So that would be a loose relationship that we can define here through these objects associations that may not apply to everybody, but may apply to some systems. So this is a screen you can go into and visually edit and update and create those associations if you need to. So this is basically what an overview of the screen looks like. You have your context, and then the different associations that are already set up for that. They're in the middle. And then as you click on those, it shows you the details. You're able to edit those associations between those two objects if you want to. So basically what drives the screen is the association context. So this particular one is defining which tags are listed on the overview screen, and then there's which tags are listed with which alarm, which tags are listed with which probe. So those different associations are here, and that kind of drive what you see on the screen, so you can make a different selection based off of what you want to edit. So here we're looking at the tags that are associated with the overview. If you see in the middle there, we're looking at the SSI training reporting group. And then down below that, in the second section, we're looking at the training HG reporting group. So you've got your two reporting groups there. And then in the right-hand side of that grid, you've got which tags are associated with that. So you can make selections there. You have your up and down sort orders to kind of move those around. And as you click on them, it shows you the details, and you can change or delete those associations if you need to. Another option we've added in the data editor module is the ability to override analog data specifically. We did have the ability before to override digital input signals coming into us, some of those coming in from the DCS or things like that, like Unit Online. We had the ability to override those, but there was no real way to override analog values coming into the system, for example, fuel flow or something like that. So that's what we've added to Prism 1.6. The workflow for that is similar to overriding a digital input. So you basically select the new task, enter your dates, select the parameter, the new value, and the confirm. That will override that data. And then just as with the other data editor options, that will essentially handle all the recalcs for you, recalculate based on all the dependencies, what that new data is going to be with what has been overridden. Some other notable and smaller improvements that weren't large enough for their own slide. In the linearity module, we did add the ability to override and start a linearity with invalid bottles. We had a situation where a customer needed to do that even though the bottles were invalid. So you can now override that, but rest assured it does warn you very loudly that it won't count that your bottles are invalid. So that's not the default option, and not something that we stuck in there without a warning or anything like that. The linearity module, you can now see the current running average in the linearity running test. So we display that now as the test is kind of running through. Prism and server installer enhancement. We've done some work to the server installer to ensure that after you install a brand new blank system, you can run and start up the Prism application immediately and start your configuration through the Prism application. Start adding things like reporting groups, things like that, and get your configuration going that way. In the client installer, the user can now select which modules, if any, you want to install besides the base Prism application. So that's now available. Those are toggle switches, I believe, and you can just select all of them if you want, or whichever modules you want in that one bundled client installer that we ship. The ECMPS update, there was a fuel flow to load report, a new code that came out from the ECMPS, so we've updated our ECMPS programming to accommodate that. Some bug fixes I'll go over pretty quickly. We've done better checking of the I/O conflicts for simultaneously running sequences. A little background on that: the SpectraPack device did not allow for multiple sequences to be run at the same time. However, the 8864 does support that capability, so long as the I/O doesn't overlap between those two sequences. So we've better updated Prism to reflect that and to allow that ability as well. so that you can do that with your 8864 without an issue. We did fix an issue with the SpectraPack ease and your calibration now running screen, and that was fixed in 1.5.4. And we've added a timeout when attempting to start a sequence that has been removed from the device. So if you go in to the device itself and remove a sequence that's still in Prism, it will no longer wait until eternity for that sequence to start. We did fix an issue where some maintenance and incomplete hours were not enforcing that 15-minute separation rule. That was a pretty rare occurrence, but that has been fixed in 1.6. So another rare rounding issue with compliance events only. So if your exceedance was right on the edge of what your allowed limit was, there could have been an issue with rounding up instead of down or down instead of up and generating false events there. Very rare, but that one was fixed. There was an issue with the users and security screen when you're editing a user and scrolling at the same time. An application crash, we fixed that. The is active checkbox on the alarm actions, fixed that as well. And several installer issues with the server installer when using Windows authentication as your authentication mode. The bottle manager, if you started it up on a blank system with no QA event configurations or anything, it would crash. We fixed that. We prevented the ability to retire the same bottle more than once as well. Acknowledging multiple alarms, the UI sometimes would freeze for a few seconds, fix that. And then the 1.5 branch did have an issue with not showing the new version upgrade message only with the modules, not with the main application. So it would show up for the main application, but then the modules would not get that same message. That's been fixed in 1.5.4 and then 1.6 going forward as well. Okay, so I have a few more minutes here. I just want to briefly talk about 1.7 and kind of what's coming forward for that. And if there's any questions or feedback, definitely let us know if there's anything you'd like to see as well. So what we're going to try to focus on for 1.7 is continue to focus on that 8864 integration, take advantage of everything the 8864 can do for us, and make that a more tightly integrated and seamless experience between the DAS and the 8864. Again, continue to focus on adding administration screens, the ability for power users to go in, change any of the configuration, view any of the configuration easily, and just make those configuration type changes. We are hoping to add Allen Bradley PLC direct support from Prism in 1.7. So we're starting on development on that now, and we'll let you know how that turns out, how that goes. We do hopefully have some charting and trend updates that may be coming in 1.7 as well. So we do have the trends. We're thinking about potentially adding a more advanced type of charting, maybe module or screen that can do some more powerful charting type stuff than kind of the live trends can do now. One new screen, new administration screen that we've already added in 1.7 is the new QA event config screen. So this gives you the ability to see what the configuration is for your different QA events in the system. So it's broken down by instrument. So you can see we've got CO2 selected here. It's got a 0 configuration, a span configuration, a low level linearity configuration, and a high level linearity configuration. All of those you can see, edit, add additional ones to the different instruments here. So this screen was not existing before. This is a new screen we've added that allows users to go in and modify or set up those configuration records in the system. The session editor, we've done a redesign of that screen. The screen now has all the new session options and allows you to easily create and export those session files that are needed to run Prism. We're in the process of working on this one right now, which is the non-bottle expected value screen, a redesign of that. So we have the bottle manager, and then any expected values that are not bottle related would be updated using this screen. So it's kind of a select your instrument, select your existing expected value, and then update to put in the new value for that screen. So that one's still in progress. We have added a couple features to this. We can now track an optional certification date and expiration date and serial number based off of an expected value. So if you have filters that have that information in them and you want to keep track of that, you'll now be able to do that through the update of this screen. Additional pending enhancements that are not far along in development enough that I have screenshots for. Add the terminal emulator to Prism for the 8864, so that when you go to that 8864 page, there will be a button where you can click on, and then you can start up a direct terminal session there from within the app to the 8864. Obvious caveat to that is the Prism app needs to be able to connect to the 8864. So that may not be something that everybody can use in every situation, but it may be handy for some if you do have that connection, direct connection there. Another one in progress is the Edit Raw Points page. So this will be a new screen that will give us the ability to add, edit, or remove any kind of raw points in the system. Before we had to do this in the database because these kind of changes were not used that often, but if you do something like within the 8864 where you get a new IO card, well, you would have to go in here and then add all of those raw points so that we can now talk to those new points that have been added to the 8864. Again, something the Spectre Pack really didn't have the capability of, but the 8864 does. So we're going to try to leverage that, and now you'll have a screen where you can go and add and edit those points as well. We're working on a redesign of the tag administration screen. So the tag administration screen has been out there for a while. It kind of does the basic work of allowing you to view, edit, and set up tags in the system. This screen is going to hopefully do a lot more things like dependency checking, a lot of validation, maybe a guided type wizard of tags that you may want to set up, the ability to copy and create a new tag for a different reporting group that's essentially the same as the other tag. So hopefully things like that will be added in this new screen, and it'll be a lot easier to use. And that is the end of the presentation. That's all I had. If there's any questions or anything like that.
All right. Well, yeah, and if you have additional questions, Landon's email is up there too. You can shoot him an email. But thank you so much, everybody, for attending today. Thank you, Landon.